I'm real curious about one thing. Why is it important for you to do this?
I wonder myself. You mean, am I the alien ambassador, whether I like it or not? Well, I often, when asked this question, I've said, it beats honest work. I mean, my brother is a PhD in 3 subjects and works in hard science, and I don't think it's brought him immense happiness, not that he's despondent, but I was always kind of a slider, and certainly when I reached La Chirera in 1971, I had a price on my head by the FBI. I was running out of money. I was at the end of my rope. And then they recruited me and said, with a mouth like yours, there's a place for you in our organization. And, I've worked in deep background positions about which the less said, the better. And then, about 15 years ago, they shifted me into public relations, and I've been there to the present. I think ideas get me high, and I like the feeling of understanding, and I love diversity to the point of weirdness. I mean,
There's more to it than that for you, because, being tuned into ideas and turned on by ideas is one thing, but you can keep it just to yourself. The sharing of it is something else. I think that's what I'm getting at. Why do you do that?
Well, one thing is, I'm really fascinated. I think of myself as a pretty savvy person, and not easily led into false dogma. Well, so that's enough of that. Now I want to address the concerns that we've been dealing with over the past 2 days. And from my perspective, we sort of designed this weekend with the notion of showcasing Rian's thought, and I think we've done that very well. To put what I'm going to say this morning in context, I just want to briefly review the basis of her theory. It is quite simply that the absence of patriarchy does not imply matriarchy. The natural and most long-running form of human organization is what Rian has named partnership society. Partnership societies were the norm up until, pick a number, 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. In any case, eventually falling with the fall of Minoan Crete to Mycenaean invaders around 1000 BC, and that set us into the era of dominator cultures, which she believes, and I agree with her, is a temporary, I won't say aberration, a temporary, necessary adaptation, but one that we can now move beyond. Rian's approach is basically to say what happened, that there was partnership society, and then she's very insistent that there was a confluence of factors which caused the shift from the partnership society to the dominator culture. I, being cast more in the fanatical mode, prefer to think that there was one major cause, and that its adumbrations can be explicated by the methods of archaeology, good logic, and a little visionary imagining. And so I want to tell you the story this morning. Remember, I said yesterday, the best idea will win. And if you want to do that kind of total revisioning of the position of human beings in the world, I think you have to take at first a deconstructionist approach and take away everything that impedes the construction of the new point of view.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you have heard about a book called The Mutant Message.
No.
Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about it because it's very interesting. I think it follows what you're talking about. I love your idea of a collective consciousness, and I think the book describes an Aboriginal tribe in Australia that has been living out the way in which you're speaking, a collective. And what they've come to the conclusion of is that they can no longer procreate because they have recognized that they can no longer exist on this planet. And the reason they call the book The Mutant Message is that they believe we are a mutant life form on this planet that is destroying it to the extent that they can no longer continue their lineage. And this is an interesting concept because it's the first culture I know that has selectively chosen not to breed. And along with your concept of raising our consciousness so that we understand the destructive nature of ourselves, what about a parallel vision of reducing our population as these people are, of consciously choosing not to procreate at this time?
Well, it's interesting that you brought this up. Yes, I've been saying for some time that, and the mushroom pointed this out to me, if every woman had only one child, the population of the planet would fall 50% in 40 years. 50% in 40 years without war, revolution, coercion, anything else. Now, when you suggest this to people, they say, well, didn't they try that in China and it failed? Yes, but you have to think about a couple of things. First of all, a child born to a woman in Maui or Malibu or Manhattan, that child will use between 800 and 1,000 times more resources in its lifetime than a child born to a woman in Bangladesh. Why do we preach birth control in Bangladesh? We should be preaching it on Maui, Manhattan, and Malibu, because the women in those places are highly educated, socially responsible, global people, and therefore are the population most likely to respond to this suggestion. If 15% of the women in the high-tech industrial democracies were to limit their childbearing to one child, within 10 years, certain pressure indicators on the planet would begin to move away from the red and into the black. So I think that we have got to deal with this question of population. There are clearly too many people. And one woman, one child, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a psychedelic advocate to understand the impact of that. If the population of the Earth were cut in half, everybody alive would be twice as wealthy. It's possible in 120 years that we could reduce the Earth's population to 1 billion very healthy, very comfortable, very well-educated people. Okay, that's part of what the mushroom said, and I think it may seem radical in some circles, but not here, perhaps. It also said something else, which I rarely mention, but since you brought it up, there are not only too many people, there are too many men. And I would be very interested in seeing a set of social policies, tax incentives, medical policies, insurance policies put in place to limit male birth. It's very rare in mammal populations that you have a 50-50 ratio of male to female. And in fact, it's well known that male infants are less robust than female infants. And the reason we have a 50-50 sexual ratio is because we artificially support males and withdraw resources from females. I suspect that in the High Paleolithic, the ratio was closer to 2 to 1. And my supposition in thinking about this is probably that the best ratio is about 3 to 1. This is the way to feminize the human race. If you're serious, this is the way to advance women. If you're serious, then what you have is less men, women whose dedication to the reproductive activities is confined in time to the amount of time it takes to raise only one child. This would be tremendously salutary to our problems. I've never heard it advocated, even by the most radical lesbian feminist yada yada. I've never heard anyone say male birth should be limited, but it obviously should, and through amniocentesis and this sort of thing, we can steer ourselves toward a population with the predominance of females, and those females should have only one child, and 75% of those children should also be female. This would seem, and I don't consider myself a gung-ho feminist. I mean, I'm a feminist, but I don't read the literature or try to understand all the factions and theories. As a humanist, I advocate a reduction in male births. It just seems obvious that that's the way to go. If it doesn't seem obvious to you, then let's have a public debate about it and at least make it part of the rhetoric of the culture that this is an option for people to think about.
Was there a connection between Terence or me and the CIA?
Psychedelic movement in general? Or?
I can't speak for the psychedelic movement in general, but I can definitively tell you that neither Terence nor I ever had anything to do with the CIA. If you're talking about the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, you might say, well, I could crack a joke and say, yes, well, we worked for the CIA, we worked for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. But then some of your audience might misconstrue that.
Yeah.
So let me make it clear. He never worked for the CIA, and neither did I.
Do you know where this comes from? There's a specific talk he gave where he discusses agents. And
yes, I know where it comes from, and I will dissect that right now. He said in one talk, something casually about, well, I was working deep cover for a while and then they moved me into PR, right? And who the they are was never specified. But I can tell you who the they are because those remarks, Jan Irvin either wasn't paying attention or was taking them out of context or is just an idiot because the meaning of it is clear if you listen to the whole talk, and he is talking about he worked for the mushrooms, which he did understand, correctly or not, to be actually whether it was the mushrooms themselves or they were representative of an intelligent race that was controlling it, but he worked for the mushrooms. That was the they that he worked for, and he was deep cover. And that refers to the years when he was not in public, when he was actually in the basement growing mushrooms as furiously as he possibly could, distributing those. That's deep cover, right? Then he decided, well, this is not sustainable. Sooner or later, they're going to, catch up with me on this. So he decided to go into public relations, and he started talking about it a lot more, and that's when he became, the spokesman that he is. But he was working for the mushrooms, and for Jan to take this and construe it to mean that he was working for the CIA, I mean, it's a really tortured stretch that you have to make that connection, considering how it how was, the contact. And also, I'm his brother. I think I know, and we were involved in all this stuff together quite deeply. And also, I'm his brother. I think I know, and we were involved in all this stuff together quite deeply. I've been to Esalen many times. Does that make me working for the CIA? Jan seems to think that everybody with having anything to do with psychedelics who happened to pass through Esalen was all part of this big conspiracy. Well, that's just utter horseshit. All kinds of people pass through Esalen. That doesn't mean that they're all involved in some conspiracy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just such sloppy thinking and uncritical thinking that I can't take it seriously. And I just, when all this comes up, I just feel like, well, poor Jan. I mean, the guy needs to, adjust his medications or something. I don't know. He's seriously deluded.
Well, I appreciate you addressing it. I know that there are people who are curious about that, so I figured we'd at least acknowledge.
Yeah.